The derelict human warship's twisted hull cast long shadows across the scarred surface of Zephyrus 6, standing as a grim monument to the destructive power unleashed in humanity's war against the Yadaran Empire. Captain Jordan Lewis grimaced as he led his recon team toward the ruined Juggernaut vessel. They had to recover its secrets before the encroaching Yadarans did, or billions more humans would die. For over a century, humans and Yadarans had waged a war of annihilation across the stars. The insectoid aliens attacked Earth in a brutal surprise assault, slaughtering most of the population in days. Humanity reeled, barely clinging to survival. Jordan still remembered the day Yadaran planet killers burned his homeworld to ashes. But humans refused to submit. Human scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, pouring all their brilliance and tenacity into creating the Juggernauts, titanic warships with enough firepower to obliterate entire enemy fleets. These nigh-invulnerable vessels finally gave humanity a fighting chance. Now one of those legendary ships lay wrecked before Jordan, holding secrets that could turn the tide of the war for good. But he would have to act fast. Scanners erupted with warnings. A cloaked Yadaran craft had appeared in orbit and descended rapidly toward their position. The aliens sought to claim the technological prize for themselves. "Form a defensive perimeter around the ship," Jordan barked to his squad. "We cannot let the Juggernaut's secrets fall into Yadaran claws. Humanity's fate rests on us securing those advanced weapons and systems. We'll make our stand here, no matter the cost. If those bugs want this ship, they'll have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." As the Yadaran dropship's thrusters kicked up swirling clouds of dust and debris, Jordan and his team unleashed a hail of gunfire from their entrenched positions around the Juggernaut's wreckage. Bullets pinged off the ship's armored hull as a dozen heavily armed insectoid warriors stormed down the ramp, plasma rifles blazing. The initial volleys struck several Yadarans, punching through their chitinous exoskeletons and dropping them to the ground in sprays of viscous green blood. But the rest quickly adapted, scuttling for cover behind twisted metal and returning fire with searing blasts of superheated plasma. Jordan ducked as a bolt sizzled over his head, melting a fist-sized hole straight through the metal barricade he crouched behind. All around him, his team's makeshift cover was being rapidly eaten away by the relentless Yadaran onslaught. "Fall back into the ship," Jordan yelled over the deafening cacophony of battle. "The hull plating will hold better than this scrap." Laying down suppressing fire, Jordan's squad began a fighting retreat, tossing grenades to cover their withdrawal. Shrapnel and shockwaves buffeted the Yadarans as the humans clambered through a ragged tear in the Juggernaut's flank, sealing the bulkhead behind them with a resonating clang. Inside, emergency lights flickered to intermittent life, casting an eerie red glow over a scene of utter devastation. Debris choked the corridors, dangling wires sparked and hissed, and scorch marks marred every surface. Ominous dark stains splattered the walls, mute testament to the violent end that had befallen the once mighty vessel's crew. But Jordan forged ahead undeterred, leading his battered team deeper into the ship's labyrinthine bowels, heading for the bridge. If any of the Juggernaut's advanced weapons systems were still functional, that's where they'd find the controls. Suddenly, a guttural roar reverberated through the hollow halls, raising hackles on the back of Jordan's neck. The Yadarans had breached the bulkhead. Pulse pounding in his ears, he urged his squad to pick up the pace, boots pounding on metal grating. Without warning, an ear-splitting screech of tearing metal brought them skidding to a halt. Around the corner ahead, a towering Yadaran elite emerged from the shadows, its compound eyes blazing with murderous hatred. 4 razor-sharp blades, each as long as a man's arm, extended from its forearms with a menacing snikt. The monstrous alien warrior lunged forward with blinding speed, crossing the distance to the stunned humans in a single bound. In a blurred flurry of slashes, it eviscerated 2 of Jordan's men before they could even raise their weapons to fire, leaving them crumpled on the deck in widening pools of crimson. Jordan barely managed to hurl himself aside in time, the tip of a blade scoring a burning line across his chest plate. Rolling to his feet, he jammed the barrel of his rifle against the creature's thorax and unloaded half a clip directly into its vulnerable underbelly at point-blank range. Acid green blood sprayed from the gaping wounds as the elite staggered back, its movements growing sluggish. Seizing the opening, the surviving humans unleashed a furious barrage, riddling the Yadaran monstrosity with armor-piercing rounds until it finally collapsed backward with a reverberating crash, ichor spreading around its thoroughly perforated corpse. Panting heavily, Jordan took stock of his battered team. Only 3 of them remained standing, all wounded to some degree, but they didn't have time to lick their wounds. Gritting his teeth against the pain of his own injuries, Jordan waved them onward. The bridge was close now, just a little further. Jordan burst through the bridge doors, rifle raised. The once bustling nerve center of the mighty Juggernaut now stood eerily silent. Flickering consoles cast long shadows across banks of darkened displays, the only movement the lazy drift of dust motes in the dim emergency lighting. The captain's chair sat empty, a poignant reminder of the brave souls who had manned this ship to the bitter end. But there was no time for reflection. Jordan raced to the tactical station, his fingers flying across the controls as he fought to coax the dormant systems back to life. The Yadarans were hot on their heels, and if he couldn't get the ship's weapons online, they'd be overrun in minutes. Suddenly a klaxon blared to life, bathing the bridge in pulsing crimson light. "Warning, reactor breach imminent, containment failure in T-10 minutes," a dispassionate automated voice intoned. Jordan's stomach plummeted as the implications sank in. The Juggernaut's power core must have been damaged during the cataclysmic battle that had left the ship a gutted wreck. When it blew, it would vaporize everything for 100 miles in every direction, including the Yadaran dropship. A desperate plan crystallized in Jordan's mind. He turned to the haggard remnants of his squad, their faces streaked with grime and blood. "We need to draw the bugs into the ship," he said grimly. "It's the only way to take them out and keep the Juggernaut's tech out of their filthy claws." Understanding dawned in their eyes, along with a flicker of fear. They knew what he was proposing, a one-way trip, but they also knew the stakes. If the Yadarans got their hands on the Juggernaut's advanced systems, they could turn the tide of the war. Containment failure in T-5 minutes. As the countdown ticked inexorably downward, Jordan worked feverishly to disable the ship's internal defenses, opening a clear path to the bridge. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, the skitter of claws on metal, the chitter of alien mandibles. The Yadarans were coming, drawn by the promise of slaughter and technological plunder. Jordan's men fanned out, taking up defensive positions around the bridge. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also a steely determination. They would make the roaches pay in blood for every step. The first insectoid head appeared in the doorway, compound eyes glittering with malevolent hunger. Jordan sighted down his rifle barrel, finger tightening on the trigger. "Come on, you sons of bitches," he growled through gritted teeth. "Come and get what's coming to you." The Yadaran warrior screeched a challenge and surged forward, its bladed arms slashing the air. A heartbeat later, the bridge erupted in a storm of gunfire and shrieks. The Yadarans surged onto the bridge, a seething mass of gnashing mandibles and razor-sharp claws. Jordan and his team opened fire, the staccato roar of their weapons filling the confined space. Armor-piercing rounds tore through the leading wave of insectoid warriors, spraying the walls with viscous green ichor. The air grew thick with the acrid stench of charred chitin and spilled viscera as the front ranks crumpled to the deck, their vital fluids sizzling on superheated metal. But more kept coming, heedless of the mounting casualties, driven by an implacable hunger for slaughter. Jordan shifted his aim to a hulking brute wielding a plasma cannon, its exoskeleton adorned with the jagged scars of countless battles. Sighting down the barrel of his rifle, he put a tight burst through the creature's compound eyes. The crystalline lenses shattered in a spray of shimmering fragments, and the Yadaran let out an ear-splitting keen as it collapsed, its weapon clattering to the deck. Seizing the fallen cannon, Jordan turned it on the remaining Yadarans, a savage snarl twisting his lips. He pulled the trigger, and a coruscating beam of incandescent plasma swept across their lines, igniting their flesh like dry kindling. The aliens were engulfed in a hellish conflagration, their agonized shrieks drowning out the sizzle of searing chitin. Under the relentless onslaught, the Jaggernaut's advance faltered, their numbers rapidly dwindling. Amid the chaos, Jordan risked a glance at the countdown display. "Containment failure in T-2 minutes," the impassive voice intoned. "Just a little longer." Suddenly a piercing shriek cut through the cacophony of battle. A lithe figure darted through the swirling smoke, with preternatural speed, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. Jordan barely had time to register the threat before a wickedly barbed stinger punched through his chestplate, the sheer force lifting him off his feet and slamming him back against the bulkhead. Blinding agony lanced through his body as he slid to the floor, his vision swimming with encroaching darkness. Through the haze of pain, he saw a towering form loom over him, its sinuous grace belying the savage hunger in its faceted eyes. The Jaggernaut queen, her regal bearing marred by the cruel twist of her serrated maw. She raised her stinger for the killing blow, a single droplet of viscous venom trembling on its razored tip. But even as oblivion beckoned, Jordan summoned the last ember of defiance from the depths of his pain-racked body. With a wordless cry of desperate fury, he lunged forward, driving his combat knife up to the hilt in the soft flesh beneath the queen's jaw. Black ichor gushed from the wound as she recoiled with an ear-splitting screech, ripping the blade free in a spray of foul-smelling blood. Seizing the momentary reprieve, Jordan scrambled away, his hand closing around the grip of a fallen comrade's rifle. Rolling to his back, he brought the weapon to bear and unleashed a ravening burst of fire into the queen's thorax. High-caliber rounds stitched a line of gaping wounds across her body, perforating her vital organs in a welter of shredded tissue. She swayed drunkenly, her movements growing sluggish as the life bled from her ruined frame. Then, with a final shuddering gasp, she toppled forward and hit the deck with a resounding crash, her segmented limbs twitching spasmodically in the throes of death. Jordan staggered to his feet, one hand clutched to the ruin of his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His eyes swept the bridge, taking in the scope of the carnage. The Jaggernaut were in full retreat, their will to fight broken by the fall of their queen. They scuttled back into the bowels of the ship, leaving their dead and dying heaped in mounds of twitching, oozing chitin. But even as the immediate threat receded, the countdown continued its inexorable march. Containment failure in T-60 seconds. Jordan limped towards the helm, his blood-slick fingers fumbling across the controls. If he could just divert enough power to the engines, maybe they could put some distance between them and the Jaggernaut dropship before the reactor went critical. With gritted teeth and blood-slick fingers, Jordan punched commands into the helm console, coaxing the Juggernaut's ancient engines to life. The ship shuddered violently, a deep groan reverberating through its battered hull as the thrusters sputtered and flared, straining against the pull of the planet's gravity. Slowly, ponderously, the Juggernaut lifted from the surface, debris cascading from its ravaged frame. Jordan sagged into the captain's chair, his strength ebbing away with each labored breath. The pain in his chest was a searing agony, and he could feel the warm, sticky flow of blood pooling beneath him. But he refused to succumb, not yet, not until he finished what he started. With a trembling hand, he input a new course, aiming the Juggernaut directly at the Jaggernaut dropship, still squatting on the planet's surface like a bloated insect. If he could ram it before the reactor blew, he could take a chunk of their invasion force with him. Buy humanity a little more time, a little more hope. It was all he had left to give. The Juggernaut accelerated, its engines howling as it hurtled toward its target. The dropship loomed larger in the view screen, a chittering hive of activity as the Jaggernaut scrambled to evacuate. Too late. Jordan watched the distance close, his vision blurring at the edges. He could hear the reactor screaming now, feel the heat building beneath his feet. It was only a matter of seconds. He closed his eyes and braced for impact. The collision was cataclysmic. The Juggernaut plowed through the dropship's hull like a battering ram, crumpling it like foil. For a split second, the two vessels were locked together in a fatal embrace. Then the reactor detonated. A blinding fireball erupted. A miniature sun birthed in the heart of the wreckage. The shockwave atomized both ships instantly, along with every Yarderan and human aboard. When the glare faded, there was nothing left but a smoldering crater, a funeral pyre of twisted metal and charred flesh. In the aftermath, Yarderan survivors sifted through the still-smoking debris, searching for any scrap of salvageable technology. But there was nothing, just blackened wreckage and the burnt husks of the dead. The secrets of the Juggernaut, along with the final moments of Jordan Lewis's life, would forever remain sealed in that tomb of molten slag. His sacrifice, his defiance in the face of certain death, would pass into legend. The war ground on, each side redoubling their efforts, growing more desperate and ruthless by the day. The Yarderans threw every resource into the meat grinder, heedless of the cost. Humanity met them blow for blow, their spirits bolstered by the memory of those who had fallen, who had given everything to hold the line. Jordan's final transmission, a terse mission accomplished, became their rallying cry, their touchstone in the bleakest of times. The Juggernaut was lost, but its legacy endured in the hearts and minds of every human still fighting, a symbol of defiance against impossible odds. It reminded them what they were fighting for, and how much they stood to lose. Because this was a war that could only end in the total victory of one side and the utter annihilation of the other. There could be no half measures, no compromise. Only the grim certainty that when the dust settled and the guns fell silent, one species would stand triumphant atop the corpse of their enemy. The battle for the future, for the very right to exist, had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.